My wife's mother tricked her into cheating, so I uncovered the truth, exposed them both, and took my life back. Hey Reddit, I've been on a wild ride these past few months, and I need to get this off my chest. It's been the hardest thing I've ever gone through, but I finally feel like I've taken my life back. What I'm about to share might sound unbelievable, but trust me, this all really happened. And if you think this is crazy, wait until you hear the rest in part 2. Buckle up. I've been married to Karen for 5 years. We met in college, and we hit it off instantly. She was intelligent, beautiful, funny, the kind of woman who can light up a room. We've always had a strong connection, and even though there were the usual ups and downs that come with any relationship, I genuinely thought we were solid. Or at least, I did until everything blew up in my face. Now, before I go into the specifics, I need to give you some context about Karen's mother, Joyce. Joyce was always a little off. I can't pinpoint exactly when it started, but after we got married, I started noticing the subtle ways she would meddle in our relationship. At first, I chalked it up to her being a protective mom, but soon enough, it became clear that there was more to it. Joyce was always saying things like, "Are you sure you're happy with him?" Or you deserve someone who treats you like a queen. Little comments that seemed innocent on the surface, but when you hear them repeatedly, they start to wear on you. And I noticed that Karen would sometimes look uncomfortable when Joyce said these things, like she was second-guessing herself. Still, I never thought it would go this far. I first started suspecting something was off when Karen began acting distant. She wasn't as affectionate as she used to be, and she started going out more often without telling me where she was going. At first, I told myself she was just busy with work or hanging out with friends. But then the red flags started piling up. Karen came home late one night smelling like perfume that wasn't hers. I confronted her about it, and she told me it was just a colleague from work. I didn't buy it, but I didn't have any solid proof, so I dropped it. But the distance between us kept growing, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I started paying closer attention to her behavior, checking her phone when she wasn't around, and even hiring a private investigator. What I found shook me to my core. Karen had been seeing someone else. And not just any guy, this man was someone I knew, a friend of mine, someone I trusted. His name was Greg. Greg and I had been close for years, and I never once suspected that he would betray me like this. The worst part? Joyce knew about the affair and had been encouraging it the whole time. It turns out that Joyce had been planting seeds of doubt in Karen's mind for months. She kept telling her that I wasn't good enough for her, that I wasn't treating her the way she deserved to be treated. She made her believe that she could do better, that she needed someone who would appreciate her more. I couldn't believe it when I found out that Joyce had been actively trying to break us apart, manipulating her own daughter into cheating. When I confronted Karen about the affair, she initially denied everything. But when I showed her the evidence I had gathered, she broke down in tears. She admitted to everything, how Joyce had planted those toxic ideas in her head, how Greg had been there for her when I wasn't, and how she had let herself fall into this mess. She apologized over and over, but it was too late. The trust was shattered. But it wasn't just the affair that broke me. It was the fact that Joyce, the woman who was supposed to be a mother figure to me, had been so calculating and malicious. She had taken advantage of Karen's vulnerabilities, manipulated her into betraying me, and then twisted everything to make it look like I was the bad guy. I felt like I had been living in a nightmare, and nothing was what I thought it was. I knew I couldn't just let this slide. I had to expose the truth, not just for myself, but for everyone involved. I decided to confront Joyce directly. I wasn't going to let her get away with what she'd done to my marriage. The confrontation was nothing short of intense. Joyce tried to play the victim, acting like she had no idea what I was talking about. But I wasn't having any of it. I laid out all the evidence, text messages, photos, and even recordings of some of the things she had said to Karen. I made it clear that I knew everything. She could lie, but the truth was undeniable. Joyce's reaction was a mix of denial and anger. She tried to gaslight me, telling me I was being paranoid and that Karen was an adult who could make her own decisions. But I didn't care about her excuses. I was done. I told her that I would be exposing everything to everyone, including Karen's father, who had no idea what was going on. I also made sure to tell Greg that I knew about the affair. He didn't expect me to confront him, but when I did, he didn't have much to say. He admitted his part, but it was clear he didn't regret it. The betrayal stung, but I wasn't going to let him off the hook either. I made the decision to cut both Joyce and Greg out of my life entirely. It was a difficult choice, but I couldn't keep people around who had done something so destructive. As for Karen, we spent days talking, arguing, crying, and trying to make sense of everything that had happened. She was devastated by what she had done, but it was clear that Joyce's influence had been too much for her to resist. Still, I knew I couldn't just forgive her and go back to how things were. Too much damage had been done. I filed for separation soon after. The legal process was exhausting, and it felt like a constant emotional roller coaster. Karen was trying to prove she could change, that she wanted to work things out, but every time I looked at her, all I saw was the person who had been manipulated, who had betrayed me, and who had allowed her own mother to destroy everything we had built. She begged me to reconsider, to give her another chance, but I couldn't trust her anymore. And trust, as I've learned, is everything. It's been a few months now, and I can honestly say I'm in a better place. The pain isn't gone, but I've learned to live with it. I'm working on myself, focusing on my career, and rebuilding the life I thought I had lost. I don't know if I'll ever forgive Karen for what happened, but I do know that I'm taking my life back. I'm not going to let Joyce or anyone else control my future. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning of the rest of my life. Update. Alright, Reddit, here it is. You've all been asking what happened next, how everything unfolded after I exposed Joyce and Greg for what they did. It's been a wild ride, and I finally feel like I'm ready to share the rest of the story. The truth is, the aftermath wasn't easy, but it was necessary. And yes, it's time for closure, because I've taken control of my life, and I'm finally moving forward. When I filed for separation, things didn't exactly go as planned. You'd think that after everything Karen and I had been through, she would have respected my decision and given me the space I needed. But no, Karen wasn't willing to let go that easily. She was relentless in trying to convince me to work things out, constantly texting me, showing up at my place uninvited, and even going as far as to reach out to some of my friends to plead her case. She was desperate. At first, I wanted to be angry with her. I mean, she was the one who had cheated, the one who had allowed her own mother to manipulate her into destroying everything. But part of me still remembered the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman who had stood by my side through thick and thin, before all of this madness. So, I tried to be civil. I agreed to meet with her a few times, just to talk. But every conversation felt like it was going in circles. Karen was filled with regret, and I could see that she was genuinely remorseful for what she had done, but at the same time, I couldn't ignore the fact that she had been so easily swayed by her own mother. The betrayal was too much. I told Karen that I needed time. Time to think, time to heal, and most importantly, time to figure out what I wanted. I made it clear that forgiveness wasn't something I could just give freely, that I needed to find a way to trust again, if that was even possible. She understood, or at least, I thought she did. But I wasn't about to let her off the hook that easily. During this period, I started focusing on myself. I immersed myself in my work, took up hobbies I had abandoned, and spent more time with the friends who had supported me through the ordeal. I didn't want to fall into the trap of feeling sorry for myself. Instead, I used this time to rediscover who I was before all of this chaos. And it felt good. I realized that there was life beyond Karen, beyond the heartache. I wasn't defined by what had happened to me, I was defining my own path. As for Karen, she continued to try to repair things, but it became more and more clear that she was doing it for the wrong reasons. She wasn't just trying to make amends for the affair, she was trying to fix her own guilt. She had hurt me, and now she was struggling with the consequences. But what bothered me the most was that she hadn't fully confronted the root cause of her actions, her mother. I finally decided that I had to confront Joyce again. The woman who had poisoned our relationship needed to face the consequences of her manipulation. I couldn't move forward without doing this. So, one evening, I called her and asked her to meet. It was time for a final showdown. When Joyce walked into the cafe where we agreed to meet, she looked confident, too confident. She probably thought I'd back down again like I had before. But I wasn't the same person anymore. I had nothing to lose. Nee told her exactly how I felt. I laid out everything, how she had manipulated her own daughter, how she had interfered in our marriage, how she had caused this mess in the first place. And I made it clear that I would never allow her to destroy any other relationships in my life. She tried to justify herself, saying things like, I was just looking out for Karen, or she deserves someone who will treat her better. But I wasn't listening to her excuses. This wasn't about Karen's happiness anymore, it was about the toxic hold Joyce had over her and over me. At one point, Joyce tried to guilt-trip me, saying things like, you'll be the one who ruins Karen's life, and you're not giving her a chance to make things right. But I wasn't swayed. I had been the one to suffer in silence, while Joyce had pulled the strings in the background, and I wasn't going to let her control my future anymore. By the end of the conversation, Joyce was furious. She stormed out, saying I was making a mistake and that I'd regret it. But I didn't care. I had taken back control of my life, and there was no going back. The hardest part of this entire ordeal wasn't even confronting Joyce. It was deciding what to do with Karen. It took me a while to come to terms with the fact that our marriage was over, at least for the time being. I didn't want to live in a toxic, broken relationship, even if I still loved her. I wanted peace, and I wanted to rebuild my life without the weight of betrayal hanging over me. So, after a few months of painful reflection, I made the decision to move forward with the separation. Karen had gone through her own personal journey, realizing that her relationship with her mother was far more dysfunctional than she had ever imagined. She finally started seeing how deeply Joyce had poisoned her perception of everything, including me. But at that point, the damage had already been done. We couldn't go back to what we had. Karen and I both agreed that it was time to let go. She moved out, and I stayed in the house we had shared, slowly making it my own again. We remained in touch, but only as friends. There was no way I could be with her again, not after everything that had happened. It wasn't just the affair, it was the way Joyce had used her own daughter to manipulate me and destroy my life. Looking back on it all now, I can say that I've learned a lot about myself, about relationships, and about the importance of setting boundaries. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just grateful for the strength I found during the darkest time of my life. The hardest part was letting go, but once I did, I felt lighter, freer. I'm starting to date again, slowly, cautiously, but I'm not rushing. I've learned to trust again, but it's on my terms, not anyone else's. And as for Joyce, I've heard through the grapevine that she's still trying to control Karen's life, but now Karen's seeing through her manipulation. That's not my problem anymore. I'm finally living for myself again, and I couldn't be happier. This is the end of my story. I've taken back my life, and I'm never looking back. Whatever happens next, I'm ready for it. That's all for today's video, folks. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time for more exciting content. See you next time.